Hello, Jodeen.
Hey, perfect timing.
Yeah,
Hey. How's it going?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank
I'm
you.
actually cold because our heating system broke down today.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, but I'm in a building, so it's not too bad. Plus, they're gonna fix it hopefully soon.
Okay, yeah. Because it's like really cold today.
It's cold. I'm like wearing double
Oh,
sweaters.
my goodness. Hey, I hope you get nice and toasty soon. Um, we got a good topic, so I guess we can start diving in.
It
It's
is
5 o'clock.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to Family Law Now After Hours. My name is Jodeen. I'm an articling student here at RIA. As one of the newest members of the team, I've already had the wonderful exposure to so many different areas of family law, and I'm really looking forward to building my practice and just taking on new adventures like Shanza has in her first year of practice. Um, yeah, so really looking forward to our conversation today. I also have with us Shanza. She is a first year associate, and she's a dedicated family lawyer with a strong focus on compassionate and effective legal representation. Her background in business management enhances her strategic approach to legal matters. Shanza excels in negotiation, achieving favorable settlements, through strategic dialogue and strong advocacy for her clients. She prioritizes clear communication, ensuring that clients are informed and empowered throughout the legal process. Thanks, Shanza, for joining us. Um, just before we get started, everyone, I just have a few housekeeping things to do. So today's topic, as you know, is how to tell your spouse you want a divorce. Please note that for the purposes of the series, um, we are simply discussing legal information about separation, divorce, and family law matters. Any information provided here should not be construed as legal advice. And if you have any questions, there is a Q&A feature here on Zoom. We ask that you submit your questions, your comments that way. If you have questions regarding your specific matter, please call our office or a lawyer in your area to book a consultation. That way you can receive tailored advice. Also, stay tuned because at the end, I'll be sharing how you can schedule a free initial consultation with one of our lawyers here. Um, yes, so thank you so much for joining us. Uh, Shanza is gonna start us off on this topic. Um, and she's gonna talk to us about choosing the right time because timing is important. Go ahead, Shanza, take it away.
Thank you, Jodeen. I'll say the basics. When you're looking, you want to find the right moment to have the conversation. So, you want to approach this conversation in the right setting, privately, not with an audience. When you both have the space to process and respond without feeling rushed or caught off guard. Um, right? So when you're communicating your intention to separate, to divorce, it's preferable to have a more peaceful setting, no outside stressors, and have a more thought out conversation than finding, you know, more dramatic ways of announcing, your intention. So you want to do it in the most peaceful way you can. And even as a lawyer and from like a legal standpoint, the reason you want to approach this situation calmly is because you do not want to escalate tensions. Um, you know, so you want to find a setting that allows both of you to communicate more effectively, because this is going to set up the tone for the negotiations that will follow in your separation and in the divorce proceedings. Um, so, and then choosing the right time also has practical implications. For example, if there are children involved, then you'll want to avoid having this conversation around them, or during family events, or during an emotionally charged time. These conversations can usually will lead to an emotional response. And so you want to make sure that, you're kind of shielding the children from that. And I have cases where, the intention to separate starts with a criminal charge, right? Um, so if you can avoid, um, you know, if you can avoid if you can find like a more peaceful way to have these conversations, that's better, because this is going to implicate your legal matters in the future. Because let's say, you had a fight with your spouse, you end up, involving the cops, and this is how you're kind of starting your separation process. There's going to be an undertaking, and that's going to impact parenting. That's going to impact the support matters. So, let's say their work is affected, their income is affected. That's going to affect, the financial issues. And so, you want to make sure that you are approaching this the right way and in the most calm way you can, because the tone that you set in the beginning is, for the most part, what is going to follow you throughout the process. Um, and so timing can really impact the way your spouse perceive the separation and the negotiations moving forward. Um, Again, another thing I would say is, once you do communicate your intention to separate, give your spouse time to process that
Mhm.
information, and for them to prepare for what likely might be a complex legal process, and even if not complex, a long legal process to go through. Yeah, in short, take your time to carefully choose, when and how you're going to bring up this conversation. Like I said, it's going to set the tone for a smoother or a harder legal proceedings down the line. So make sure that it's a time when both of you can focus and remain as calm as possible. And so you can have more constructive dialogue and avoid the conversation spiraling into a conflict.
Thank you, Shanza. Yeah, it's definitely an emotional time, and I think a lot of folks, their first instinct is to act on that emotion and just, you know, um, try to end things as quickly as possible so that they can move forward. However, as you said, it is extremely important to handle the situation thoughtfully, not only for emotional reasons, but also for practical and legal reasons. As moving forward, it does set the tone. And so I would echo Shanza in saying, don't rush into your decision. I would say, take your time, think about it, as this is a tough topic to tackle. And in terms of emotions, divorce is more than just, and even separation, more than just signing papers. It's about real lives. So you're making decisions that will impact your life and your partner's or your ex-partner and your kids' lives as well. So reflection is key. So that will help you to prepare emotionally. Maybe don't act on those first instincts and try to take a step back, maybe talk to someone you trust, talk to a friend, family member about your thoughts. If, of course, if you have the luxury of doing that, of course, that's not going to be for appropriate for everyone. But if you have the luxury of doing that, it's better to come from a place of having already thought these things through. It will allow for better communication. It could even spark um, counseling conversations. And, it really can help, as Shanza said, set the tone for the rest of the process. Because once you start getting adversarial, it just carries out throughout the process. And it's hard to get back to a place where you feel like um, you can come to settlement. Um, so that is what I think it would be helpful to do, um, and some emotional preparation as well. If that means taking time to just have a moment for yourself, hop in the bath, light some candles, take your time and reflect, that works too. So, Shanza, can you also speak to us about how to be so when we're, after we've calmed down a bit or, gotten some clarity, we've reflected, now it's time to actually initiate those conversations with your soon-to-be ex. What would you suggest is the best approach to those conversations?
Yeah, you want to be clear and honest when it comes to these conversations. Being clear about your intentions ensures that your spouse understands the situation and there's no ambiguity about your decision. This can prevent confusion and potential misunderstandings down the line, particularly when it comes to, you know, concerns like when did a separation occur or what was the date of separation? Um, and these questions can have an implication in your proceedings as well. Um, so you do want to clearly communicate your intention to separate, um, because under equalization, under the property division laws, those are from your date of marriage to date of separation. And so what is date of separation can sometimes be an issue that parties cannot usually agree on. And so if you, from the get-go, have had honest conversations about your intention to separate, a lot of that can potentially be avoided. Because when you separate can have important implications on the parenting time issues, on the property division regime, and all the like other aspects of the divorce. There is a legal test for determining, when a couple is separated, when there is disagreement, because sometimes you'll see parties going to court on this particular issue. And, when we are trying to understand whether separation did occur or not, we are looking at things like physical separation, financial separation, emotional separation, socially, was the couple acting as a couple?
Mhm.
And part of this test is when was the intent to separate communicated? Was it clear communication? And so if you, from the get-go, are clearly communicating your intention to separate, then that can really help identify when separation occurred. And communicating your decision respectfully is equally important. Um, while emotions may be high, remaining calm and respectful ensures that the conversation stays productive, and it minimizes the chances of creating additional conflict. And you mentioned this too, Jodeen. Um, and this can be especially important if there are children involved, because This is also going to set the tone for how you co-parent moving forward. And so maintaining a respectful and clear approach may make it easier for you and your spouse to reach an amicable agreement without the need to potentially maybe litigate. And so you do want to make sure that you're being honest, you're being clear, you're being respectful um, when it comes to your intention to communicate that.
Yes, thank you, Shanza. And for sure, before you maybe even consider before you sit down to start the conversation, just have a bit of an idea of the the timing, as Shanza said, that you may need to uh, buckle down on. So, meaning um, there are certain legal aspects under the Divorce Act which will which determines the date of separation. And those dates are important. So you need to have been apart, and you also need to have been apart for a year, at least 1 year. And also note that we are in a no fault um, divorce jurisdiction. So you can't bring um, your divorce isn't based on fault. Basically, there has to be there are certain parameters, certain established things that you need to hit in order to be able to apply for a divorce and be granted one. So just just having a primer, a general idea of what that process might look like can be helpful. And understanding that um, if you do decide to reconcile, there are some provisions in the Divorce Act as well that can reset the clock on your separation date too. So those things are also very important and tend to be some of the most contested things in when individuals decide to divorce or someone brings it up that we should probably divorce. So yeah, before the big talk, maybe have those kinds of conversations, maybe with a friend, a confidant, a counselor, just to kind of like work things out in your head before you maybe bring it to the other party. Um, and yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that on. I think it's also important to no, I think it is also important to ensure that you're not using um language sorry, that you are using I language, sorry, and not using blame language because that's only gonna stir tension and it becomes about what the other side is not doing rather than how you feel and how you would like to move forward. So definitely focus your statements on your own perspective because that is what is driving you. That should be what is driving you to make this decision ultimately. And it can also be a good way to open up conversation so that the other side can hear you instead of feeling like they're attacked because this is big news anyway. In that process, you don't want to be adding to the difficulty and tension in the situation by creating more conflict and arguments. Rather, this is simply a time for you to uh, express where you're at mentally and in the relationship without casting blame on the other side. So, yeah, it's very important to ensure that your language is focused um, on I instead of blame. That way, it will definitely help you emotionally too, when you're trying to frame the argument, when you're presenting your case for why you feel like this relationship should be over. Um, and I know that's really, really, it's a really, really difficult conversation to have, and um, emotions, can rise at some point in that conversation. So always remember that it's okay to just take a step back for a moment. Um, Everything doesn't have to be hashed out all at once. This could be a series of conversations. And that way you can give both parties time to help to make it through the difficulty of this conversation. And I think that there's something very compassionate about knowing that giving the other side a chance to also reflect and digest this information. Shanza, if you could just talk to us a bit more about um, how you could, how being compassionate can even help the legal process, and how parties should be compassionate towards each other in this difficult time.
Yeah, I'll repeat some of the things you said, Jodeen, because those they are important. It's important to approach the conversation with compassion. Um, this helps to acknowledge the emotional impact the situation may have on both parties, right? It's going to be a difficult process for both. It's not always easy to see the other side. Everyone reacts differently. So it's good to be mindful, of not just your emotions, but be a bit more compassionate towards, your spouse or soon to be ex-spouse. And it's hard to do that, right? Because you're going through a big change and you are dealing with your own emotional response. So um it's a difficult thing to ask for sometimes, but it's good to be mindful and be compassionate, about the other side and their emotions as well. And this can help, right? Because the whole point of going through your separation is to be able to enter into an agreement that you both seem to agree to, right? And if you understand where the two of you are coming from, it can really guide the conversation. It can really guide the negotiations. And a lot of times I feel like this is what is missing when there's a lot of, disagreements. Um, and sometimes I do try to, help my clients see the other side or their perspective, because sometimes you really just need a bit more, compassion there to really understand, where the demands are coming from, or why, there's a disagreement on certain items. And so like looking beyond just the requests and understanding the emotions or the reasons or the goals behind those demands it can really help the parties reach a settlement. Um, and even in general, showing, empathy can help avoid increased tensions. Um, and again, this will help avoid more adversarial proceedings later on. Um, when you acknowledge the difficulty of these conversations and the process that you're going through, it can also help maintain a sense of mutual respect and understanding, which then kind of encourages the parties to seek more peaceful resolutions. Again, if children are involved, then again, being compassionate not only shows, you know, maturity and sensitivity, but it sets a positive example for the children, during this difficult time. And it sets a positive example, um, of ongoing co-parenting that's going to continue on after the separation and the divorce has been finalized. And even from a more practical perspective, if you do intend to maybe try mediation or alternate dispute resolution, then it's a lot easier to, try these different avenues and to come to agreements in these settings, when both parties are willing to acknowledge the emotional weight of the situation, and are they motivated to work together in the best interest of everyone involved? And so, being compassionate can really help and can really reduce the emotional conflict and really open up opportunities for parties to settle and avoid lengthy legal process.
Sorry. Thank you, Shanza. Yeah, for sure. Managing the emotional conflict is a huge part of well, it's from what I've seen in this practice so far, the emotional conflict plays a huge part in moving the legal process forward because sometimes parties kind of get stuck on something that may have the other side may have done to which had hurt them, and they're really hung up about it. And instead of grounding and focusing on the task at hand, which is to come to some kind of agreement so that we can move forward for the sake of each other or the children or both, it kind of gets caught up in the emotional conflict. Um, so it's definitely important to continue to be compassionate as Shanza has said. And also, I think within those conversations, it's important to set boundaries. So when you're setting boundaries during your initial conversations about, wanting to pursue a divorce, uh, you 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 do this because without them, the entire conversation can easily just like spiral. And you just, as I was saying earlier, sorry, a lot of this tends to kind of blend together because at each stage, you want to ensure that you're still setting boundaries. And because the conversation can easily spiral into blame or rehashing old arguments. So you can start by explaining that before you get off track. I understand your frustration and I just want to focus on what's next for us because that's the main reason for this conversation. It's not to spark an argument or and as I mentioned earlier, if emotions get too high, it's okay to step away, respectfully say that, we may need some time. Let's revisit this when we're feeling calmer. Boundaries help to keep the conversation on track, but also can help with emotion regulation and just trying to decrease conflict. So yeah, I think that's a great way to segue into after we've created boundaries to focus on next steps. How about we throw it to Shanza so she can talk about next steps?
I love
Sorry,
that.
that was awkward. I'm sorry. Okay, go.
That was great. I love that. But yeah, once you've communicated your decision to divorce, it's important to outline what the next steps will look like, both legally and practically. One of the first things to make clear is how you intend to move forward. Do you intend to move forward with hiring lawyers? Some people go to mediation right away if they're amicable. Some sit down and communicate between themselves if they are even more so amicable. Some hire lawyers before separation, right? Sometimes we have people hiring lawyers before they have even communicated the intention to separate because they do want that guidance before
Mhm.
the big step or the big decision. Some will hire right after separation. Some hires months after separation. Every relationship is different. And as a lawyer, I always say it's best to speak to a lawyer as soon as possible to know your rights and obligations. There is a
Mm-hmm.
misconception sometimes that if you are retaining lawyers, you're being adversarial, which is not
Mm-hmm.
true. Sometimes it's best to speak to a lawyer, just to figure out where you stand or what's the best next move.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're dealing with parenting issues. Um, it's best to speak to a lawyer before, let's say, you move out of the matrimonial home, because you want to make sure you have negotiated a parenting plan before the move out of the house to avoid any complications after you've moved out. Let's say there's this agreement, there was no parenting plan agreed to prior to the move out, and now because of the disagreement, one parent is withholding the child. So it can get messy, it can get
Yeah.
complicated, but you do so it's best to speak to a lawyer, before you're making these big decisions, before you're going through a big change. So, before you make any decisions, you might wanna, take a moment to speak to someone, speak to a lawyer, just so you can avoid getting into any complications later on.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got sidetracked there a little, but
It's
yeah.
okay. You
So
sounded
yeah,
on
you
topic
want
to me.
to so you want to, sorry, your question was, yeah, next steps, right? So you want
Next
to
steps, yeah.
communicate on how you want to, proceed to your partner. You
Mm-hmm.
can let your spouse know that you're committed to handling the matter respectfully, and you're open to trying to resolve things amicably, if possible, right? Because as you're going through separation, sometimes there can be misconceptions. And if you communicate that intention, then perhaps that's reassuring to the other party.
Mm-hmm.
Mediation can definitely be an effective alternative to a lengthy court process. It provides both parties with an opportunity to work with a neutral third party to negotiate and reach an agreement on all matters related to their separation. Mediation can be quicker, less expensive, less stressful. But is mediation good for you? That's a different question. It's not
Yeah.
suitable for everyone. If there's a significant power imbalance, one party is
Mm-hmm.
unwilling to negotiate in good faith, or there are concerns about dishonesty or abuse. In those cases, mediation may not be as effective. In such cases, maybe litigation might be something that might be necessary down the line to protect one's rights and ensure a fair resolution.
Mm-hmm.
But you should communicate that regardless of, whether you choose mediation or litigation, um, you may intend to hire legal representation, um, to ensure that your rights are protected and to help guide you through the legal process. There's nothing wrong in that. Um, but it's best to communicate your intention and to your spouse, just so they kind of know what to expect. Sometimes it's best for you to tell your ex-spouse that a letter from a lawyer might be coming. Sometimes if it's coming straight from the lawyer, that sometimes it catches people off guard. But it also depends on your relationship dynamics, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there is abuse, and so in those cases, I wouldn't recommend for my client to negotiate directly or speak directly to the other party.
Right.
So it differs relationship to relationship. And so you wanna, you know, um, depending on you and your ex-partner and how your relationship is, how amicable you are, your next steps can vary widely. And so some of the things that I talked about today, you can keep those into account to see how you would want to, move forward.
For sure. It's definitely, as you said, case by case. Every relationship is different, which is why this is legal information and not legal advice, because in order for lawyers and legal practitioners to give advice, they need to know the specifics of your case. So, yeah, thank you, Shanza, for breaking down what next steps could look like. For anyone who is going through this or looking to have this kind of conversation. As Shanza mentioned, there's steps that you can discuss that are within the court process and steps outside of the court process. So, and the choice between those two and the method that at which you attempt to resolve the issues that come out of your divorce will depend again on the facts of your specific situation, and how and the relationship that you and your partner have, or ex at that time, have developed. And so um yeah, after that, you definitely want to ensure that your partner has time to process. Um, it's good to give the other party time after that initial conversation, because there's going to be a lot to digest. Um, Divorces, it's a tends to be a shock to people. So even if a relationship has been struggling for a while, the other side may not have seen it coming. So they need space to absorb what is happening so that they can thoughtfully respond, hopefully. Um, and so that, and within that time, you can do those next steps that Shanza had mentioned. So I think if you're on the other side, it's if you're receiving this, it's always important for anyone really to ensure that when they're signing or entering a legal process, that they speak to a lawyer. So that is an important next step. And before signing anything, I don't know how many times you have seen this, Shanza, but in just observing and helping with other lawyers, I've noticed where people have signed agreements without any legal advice, without any legal representation. And it's a lot of backtracking to try and fix things that don't suit the parties, you know, moving forward. So yeah, I'm sure you've seen cases like that, Shanza.
Yeah, and it's a lot more complicated to fix that. It's so much more easier if parties come to you from the start and
Yeah,
you can help them, but sometimes it's a lot of, backtracking,
a
a
lot of
lot more in
backtracking.
legal cost too for people,
A lot
unfortunately.
more legal cost, yeah,
Yep,
as
yep,
well. Yeah.
yep.
So, it's important to um take the time to process if you're the other side, and allow the other side to process as well, because the um and what I've learned at the end of the day is that the legal process isn't guaranteed. So even though you think that you have the stronger case, it may not play out that way if you end up going through the court process. And then that could lead you to absorb those costs as well. So even though you think it might be uh, the other side that's having to take on all the costs. There are costs that you may have to take on as well that can make the entire process very expensive. And so, yeah, it all goes back to trying to be compassionate, I guess, and lawyers are there to help steer things in the right way. But the intention is hopefully that the parties can come to settlement to avoid uh, lengthy litigation. And so, Shanza, as we've discussed throughout this uh, this discussion. Sorry, I was looking for another word, couldn't find it. But as who you've mentioned throughout, um, it's important to have supports available. And I know I kind of jumped the gun at the beginning of the conversation and mentioned this, but it's important to have supports throughout. So can you talk to us a bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah, no problem at all. Having support available during this challenging time is important for both emotional well-being and practical decision making. Having a trusted friend, family member, or a professional who can provide you with emotional support it can be very helpful. Friends or family members, they can offer a listening ear. They can help you process your feelings, and provide, comfort during difficult moments.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, seeking guidance from a professional, such as a therapist, a counselor, can help you navigate the emotional complexities of the situation. It can help you manage your stress. It can help maintain mental clarity throughout the process. And if you're able to process your emotions better, um, you will be able to negotiate better throughout the legal proceeding, because the matters that you're dealing with as a family lawyer and the parties as they go through their separation directly relates to, their emotions. And
Yeah.
so if they're able to manage their emotions, then
Mm-hmm.
it makes the legal process a lot easier for them. It makes reaching a resolution a lot easier. It makes reaching agreements a lot easier. And there's no harm, there's nothing wrong in, speaking to a therapist, seeking to, getting counseling.
Yeah.
I always tell my clients, there's nothing wrong. Maybe it won't work, but that's fine, right? Sometimes what you hear is, I don't know if it's gonna work, but it's always worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's always worth it, right? It always helps. Um, if there is, trauma, or emotional challenges from the separation, feelings of guilt, anger, um, fear of the future. These are all very valid feelings to have.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the professionals can help with this. Even your lawyer can really provide you with a support network, right? Like we make sure that, our clients understand their rights, their responsibilities. We help them, identify what options they have moving forward. And so, getting this clarity from your lawyer can really help some clients, because for them, it's the uncertainty that triggers their
Mm-hmm.
emotional response. So having this blend of emotional and legal support can really help people move forward in a more informed, in a more confident, in a more manageable way. I really noticed this with some of my clients, and it's the uncertainty a lot of times that really
Yes.
triggers these emotional responses. Um, Also, having the right support system means that you're not facing the situation alone, right? And I think that's another thing that can really help some people, you know, um, if you're going through a separation, sometimes feeling alone, feeling lonely, very natural reaction. And so having a support system, having people that you can rely on, can really help you come from a place of strength, and it can help you move through the process in a more healthier and more balanced way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um w- I think in a previous panel, we one of the panelists mentioned that divorce is probably as heartbreaking, heart-wrenching as losing a family member. So it's important that whether even if you're the party bringing the idea that we should probably separate, or the one receiving it, it's going to hurt because it usually hurts because there's a lot that you have built on, relied on each other. So it's losing that connection, that relationship. It's always gonna be difficult. So never be afraid to ask for help if you're feeling like you're going through grief in this time. As Shanza said, there are lots of professionals that you could and should turn to in this time. Lawyers we try to offer some certainty and offer you at the very least inform you of your rights and obligations so that will give you some certainty what next steps could look like. And yeah, it's a part of our job to ensure that you are well informed on your case. So in that way, lawyers are always trying to help their clients to clear up any uncertainty. And and your lawyer might have even worked with other professionals that can be used as a resource for you. So it's always helpful to ask, hey, do you know of anyone that I can go to talk to this talk about this kind of stuff? Because they may have resources. So yeah, that's some really good points that you made there, Shanza. And I would say the last step of this process would just be, you know, to because you've stepped away from the conversation and now you would like to follow up. Um, got lost in my notes. I'm so sorry, everyone. Okay, yes. So, um, so in that, so now we're at the stage where we've, you know, we're trying to follow up to maintain, and we're trying to maintain open communication with the other side. Um, but because the conversation it isn't a one-time thing. It's not a one-time event. Following up is critical so that you can address practical matters because different things will crop up. All this time you were cohabitating or you were living together and you were in a relationship and you got used to life in one way. And now you've separated. So there are a lot of variables that will change the way you do life now. And so it will require an ongoing communication with the other side. Now, if the other side is if your communication with the other side isn't as amicable, perhaps you should look into communicating only through text or email, and maybe face-to-face communication isn't something that will be beneficial for your particular situation because that may feed into more emotional conflict and can make resolution that much more difficult. So perhaps consider the ways in which you choose to communicate with the other side when you're following up. Maybe um, maybe it's the situation is that you may not be able to communicate with them directly in these initial stages, and maybe it needs to be done through someone else just to ensure clarity and that your points have been are landing with the other side. So you also want to think about in if there are children involved, um, your next steps in terms of how you will minimize disruption in the children's lives while you're co-parenting. And so maybe you're exploring mediation, and maybe that's something that you want to bring up in conversation. Just be mindful about how you bring it up, but you'll need to you will need to ensure that you have created an open communication with the other side so that you can figure out these uh, little stragglers, these things that pop up that you're going to have to resolve in the interim until your divorce is finalized or you come to some kind of parenting agreement. Um, because yeah, that interim stage can be very difficult if you don't have anything planned out. So you're going to want to keep the lines of communication open. And yeah, I hope that was helpful. That's yeah, that's all our topics for today. Um, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear it. Uh, you can also email the questions in or respond. I'm not sure if this video is live, but you can send it in that way too. But thank you for tuning in to Family Law Now. And following this session, there will be a brief survey that will appear, and you can share your comments, make suggestions for future topics. And yeah, just your feedback is greatly appreciated. So you can also book now to take advantage of the opportunity to have a complimentary consultation with one of our lawyers. Please contact our intake team at intake@russellalexander.com and provide the code winter25 to schedule your appointment. I believe the registration for the next event is open now. And if you want to see what else we have coming up, please visit russellalexander.com/family now to have a look at that list. I'd like to say thank you so much to Shanza for holding it down, for providing such great insight. And yeah, thank you. Thanks, Shanza, for being here with me.
You too, Jodeen.
All
Always
the
amazing.
best. Yeah, have a good evening, everyone. And yeah, maybe we'll see you next time.